Hey friends, Thor here, and in today's video we are going to take a look at how to sim your character using Raidbots so you can identify what the best pieces of gear for your character are and in what situations you should be using them, and how you should go about approaching what items to choose when you're offered with upgrades in various parts of the game right now. So this is being made during World of Warcraft The War Within patch 11.1.5. This is the week that the Dinar vendor, or the Puzzle and Cartel chip vendor, has come out, so we're going to be going over some stuff that's specifically relevant for this week, but also stuff that may apply to future systems that are implemented into World of Warcraft with Raidbots. If things get big changes in the future, I may make future videos kind of updating this one, or maybe even just like, maybe do a yearly update to this one if it does well and if you guys like it and find it helpful. But if we're going to use Raidbots to sim our character, there's a few things to keep in mind. First of all, Raidbots only sims your damage. It doesn't sim your damage reduction, and it doesn't sim healing. So if you're playing a tank or a healer, there may be other tools that you need to consult in order to get a better picture of what items are going to be the best upgrades for your character. For healers, I know there's a site called Questionably Epic that you can use to sim your character. I've never used it before because I haven't played healer that much, so I'm not going to really show you how to use that or do anything beyond just reference what it's called in this video. There are other videos and other content creators that have made guides for that you can find that will be a lot more accurate than anything I would say about Questionably Epic. I have used Raidbots to sim my character for many years, and I'm very familiar with everything on the website, so I thought it would be helpful for me to make a guide, especially for my guildies who maybe aren't as experienced with it but could find a lot of use out of this tool as we strive toward being a better mythic guild. So if you're a tank, then there is a lot of value, I think, in simming for damage per second, but you also need to use a little bit of critical thinking when you're deciding which upgrades you're going to pursue. If a trinket does a lot of damage but offers no defensive value, and you're in a situation where you really need a little bit more defense than your class's base kit offers, then it makes sense to use a defensive trinket even if it is a damage loss. If you're playing a DPS character, this is an extremely useful tool that you maybe need a little bit of context for. There are some things that you need to think about that we'll talk about as we go through the key, or as we go through the video here. But I want to present you guys with how to use this tool and some of the really cool features that it has that I think a lot of people are not aware of, or maybe just haven't made use of before. So what do we need to use Raidbots? The first thing that you're going to need is you're going to need the Simulationcraft Addon. I will include a link to this add-on on the CurseForge page in the video description. You can also install it through the CurseForge app. But the add-on is called Simulationcraft, so if you look that up, you can find it. Again, I'll include a link down below for you guys. Once you have this add-on installed, it's a very lightweight add-on. It's a very simple add-on. All it does is it allows you to get a simcraft string for the character that you're logged in on. A couple of things you want to pay attention to. It will pull everything about your character currently. So it will pull your active talents. If you have different loadouts saved, it will pull all of the loadouts that you have for your spec. If you want to sim for raid, make sure you're in your raid spec. We'll go ahead and do that on my warlock here right now. It will also pull any items that you have in your bags and include them as options for your sim. So for example, I have this 665 Entropic Scarred Core, which I had been using. I'm not using anymore because I picked up a decent trinket through the vault this week. I got a mythic Reverb radio from Rick Reverb, which sims just a little bit higher, so we are using that on my warlock right now. But we'll go through and see how those stack up against each other. So what you need to do, there's a chat command, which I will put again in the description below. Maybe I'll put it on screen here as well, but it's just /simc. And once you enter that in the chat, it will bring up this box that has like your character name, a little bit of information about it, and then it's got like these different strings down here. And all you want to do is copy this. So you hit Control-C, Command-C if you're a Mac user. And once you do that, it will automatically close the window by default. And once you have that string, we're just going to keep that on our clipboard for a while. And we're going to go to www.raidbots.com. And this will take you to this page here. And there are a lot of different tools that you can use. We're going to start with Top Gear. So you go to the Top Gear section here. I'm just going to open it in a new browser tab so that we can keep the home page open and accessible. And what we're going to do is just go into this box at the top. Now, if you didn't have anything saved in here from visiting the site before, it'll be empty, and this is what you see on the page. And you just want to paste your simcraft string in here. It'll take a second to load, but it'll load up basically all the things about your character. This will have like all your currencies. You can see right here, it has your current item upgrade currencies. It'll have catalyst charges. It has item sets. You basically never need to select like a minimum set bonus. Maybe if you're in a situation where you're trying to sim, like, should I run 2-set or keep my old 4-set, then you might want to take a look at that. But I've never actually used this part before because I've never needed to. And then if you scroll down, it will have all of your character's items. Now, the most common things that I end up simming are trinkets, and then maybe like jewelry. If you have like a bunch of different rings at the same item level and you want to say, well, hey, I have a lot of haste, maybe I should drop some for mastery with this ring, you can sim those off against each other. We're going to focus a lot on trinkets because that's generally where it's really valuable to do different simming. But you can keep scrolling down the page and you can change your enchants. You can change your gems. There is a warning if you select a bunch of different gems that I guess you have to select the option to replace gems and enchants. Yeah, there's a warning that pops up. Large gem enchant sims may take a very long time. Just the amount of iterations that it does, it can take a very, very long time if you're trying to do that. We're just going to leave our gems as they are. But if you have different gems that you want to figure out, like, hey, which one is actually best, you can do that. And if you scroll all the way down, you can see your talent builds here as well. So if you have a couple of talent builds, if you want to say, like, hey, you know, this talent option might be a lot easier to play for this fight, let me see how it sims against each other. So you can choose that. If you scroll down even further, you can do this drop-down menu, and this is where you can choose the different fight options. Now, by default, it's going to do a patchwork sim of one boss for 5 minutes, and it's going to use the weekly SimC version. You can do nightly or latest. Weekly is just default. That's probably fine. You can just leave it there for most classes. There are, depending on the patch, there are like other things that you can select here. So if you're using Dawn Thread or Dusk Thread as your embellishments, you can select what uptime you project to have on that. In past expansions, there's been options to select like different things for trinkets that may have interaction with other people who have the same trinket in your party or that sort of thing. But we're not going to worry about any of those things right now. That's a little bit more in the weeds than we want to get for this for the purpose of this video. But the main thing that we're going to do is just kind of run some sims, and we're going to look at all the different tools that the site has available. One thing that I would always recommend doing, especially now that we're at the point in the season where crests have been fully uncapped, is just select this max all button for your currencies. This will just make it so that you're not limited by how much of a currency you have. Because if you don't do this, then by default it'll say like, hey, hold on, you only have 15 crests, you can only upgrade this item one time. Even if you want to sim it, upgrade it to the max item level. And, you know, right now, like, you know, you can go out and spend an hour of crest farming and get enough crests to upgrade items multiple times. So just like that. But what we're going to do for the purpose of this video is we're going to sim a bunch of trinkets here. Now, what you can do is you can just like click on items in your inventory. So like I have this socketed belt, right? So you can just click on that and it'll sim it against what you have currently equipped. But a useful thing that you can do is click on this little plus button, and then you can say like, hey, I actually want to sim this upgraded to 671. And you can do that. So now it's going to be the same item level as the other belt that I have. Now, I don't know, we'll go ahead and throw this in the sim. This does have a high amount of versatility versus a high amount of mastery, so it may not be better. But we're also going to sim some trinkets here. So I have a Gear Grinder spare keys. This generally sims pretty well, but I have a feeling this is a little bit of a sim trap. It is possible to miss with the bike, and also, you know, just, I don't know. On-use damage stuff isn't my preference versus stuff that has stats. But we can also sim, like I have this Florindo's Pilot Light, which is not very good. Usually doesn't sim high, but we'll throw it in here because we can. Why not? We'll take that Entropic Garden Core that I showed, and we're going to throw this up as a 671 item to sim. And we're just going to go with that for now. And then once you have everything selected, everything you want to sim, one other thing you need to keep in mind, the iterations down at the bottom here. So every time you select something, so like let's say I select this ring, it's going to increase the amount of iterations that are used, because that's basically how many times it's running the sim. It runs it multiple times for each item that you have equipped so that you can get more accurate results, right? If you're in one sim versus running 100 sims and taking the average of those 100 sims, you're going to have a more accurate result with the 100 than the one, because the one might be an outlier, right? You may have one where like none of your spells crit, or you may have one where all of your spells crit. But if you're running it over a lot of different iterations, those outliers are going to be taken care of. So you are limited in how many iterations you can do. You can increase this by getting a subscription to the site or by supporting them on Patreon. I would encourage you to throw them a couple bucks a month if this is a tool you use regularly. You get a lot more iterations on your Sims. There's some other cool features that get unlocked, and you know, it's good to support tools that you're making regular use of, right? Yeah, so do that, and then we're going to click on the Find Top Gear. This will take a few minutes, so while that's running, we are going to look at another tool that is available on this site, and that is the Droptimizer. Now, this is another really cool tool. We're going to paste in, again, our simcraft string that we got from in-game. And yeah, this will bring up a bunch of different options of things that you can check here. So, first of all, you can check the current raid, Liberation of Undermine, and it'll let you sim different difficulties. Now, I think there's some limitations about how many things you can select based on whether or not you're a subscriber to the website. For instance, I think on Mythic Plus dungeons, if you're not a subscriber, you can only sim one dungeon at a time. If you have a subscription, you can sim all of them at the same time. So a very useful feature to have unlocked. But basically, we're going to just, take a look at Mythic bosses. We're going to set everything to the max item level because we're not limited by crests to upgrade anymore. And yeah, we can run a quick sim here with all of these. I'm going to open the homepage back up in a new tab here now. You can see sometimes there is a queue. If you are a subscriber, you jump to the front of the queue if there is one. So another nice feature, especially if you're trying to sim vault stuff on Tuesday or Wednesday in the EU. Sometimes there's a pretty long queue, and if you have a subscription, you can jump to the front of the queue. So that's another nice thing you can do. We're going to go back to the Droptimizer here because I want to look at another thing that it has. And again, we'll just put in our stuff here. So again, there's the raid tool that we already looked at. You can sim Mythic Dungeons, and you can sim like what vault level you're going to have. Now, if you want to compare end of dungeon drops, you can choose the +7 to 9 vault because that'll give you 658, and then just choose, you know, the upgraded to max 8 out of 8 hero, and you can sim it there. You can do a +10 vault, which is myth track items, and you can say like, okay, I want to see like which myth track trinket is the best. So we're just going to sim everything here, and just click run Droptimizer. You can also in the Droptimizer, and we're not actually going to run all of these sims because I don't want to take up all of their bandwidth for just one video here. But we've done, we've done dungeons and raid. What if you have a puzzling cartel chip or a set of 3 puzzling cartel chips, and you want to figure out, hey, what's the best item for me to purchase? Well, they added a feature in this patch where you can just select puzzling cartel chips. That's really hard to say for me for some reason right now. And you can select either hero or myth. What I did is I ran a hero sim with everything upgraded to max item level, and then I ran a myth sim with everything upgraded to max item level, and I just compared the 2 results. And the reason I did that is because I have only killed 3 mythic bosses. My guild is cleared up through Rick Reverb. We've done 1 night of progress on sticks. But, for example, what I wanted to see is, was it worth buying a hero track Jaster Diamond versus like a myth track of one of the Mythic Plus trinkets? And the answer was yes. The hero track Jaster Diamond was as good or better than any of the myth track Mythic Plus trinkets that I get. So that was my first purchase. But depending on your class and your talent build and everything, that may be a different result for you. So you can choose to run both of those and then compare them. That's what I did. You can also sim crafted items if you are trying to decide what your next crafted piece should be. You just select the Professions Epic and then set it to whatever item level you're looking to craft, and that will allow you to sim like a cloak versus bracers versus a belt versus pants, and it even includes the Alchemist Stone if versatility is a good stat for your class. So yeah, that's another good thing that you make use of here. Yeah. So that's kind of what the Droptimizer does. Quick Sim is, I think, one of the less interesting tools. This will just run a sim of your character with your current gear and loadout and tell you what your sim DPS is. I don't think it's particularly useful because hitting your actual sim DPS is like basically impossible. This is doing a patchwork fight, which means there's literally no movement, no mechanics, and it's a sim that's doing an absolutely perfect rotation with no like lag or anything. So if you want to have a bar to aim for, you can do this and then maybe take a certain percentage off of that depending on your circumstances. But really what's useful for sims is saying like, hey, I want to know which of these trinkets is better than the other in ideal circumstances, right? So quick sim is a little bit less interesting. You can do advanced, which this allows you to put in custom scripts. If you're watching this video, you're probably not in a place where you're going to be writing your own custom Simcraft scripts. So I would recommend for most users probably skip over the advanced one. There are a couple of other tools that are not really recommended for use, but we'll go through them anyway just to kind of show you what they are and what they can be used for. So there's this gear sim. Now this used to be really nice before the Droptimizer was like fully built out and everything, because what it allows you to do is you can add an item. So you can say like, hey, I want to add, let's say a house of cards. So it allows you to choose a house of cards. You can choose like what item level it is, which trinket slot you want to put it in, and then sim that against your current gear. And then let's say you also want to add another gear set that instead of house of cards has an Eye of Kazan. And again, you can choose the item level, you can sim against it. Now, this isn't super useful anymore because if you have access to those, you can just send them through Droptimizer, or you can send them through the normal sim. If you don't have access, you can just send them through the Droptimizer. Right, and the results are going to pop up here. So Gear Compare is less useful than it used to be. One place where this is actually useful is maybe I should hold off on saying this, but we have the roulette wheel, and it does actually let you choose the secondary stats. So if you want to choose the secondary stats and run a bunch of different roulette wheel sims, you can do that here. This might be the only place that you can actually do that. I don't think that's super useful because whether or not you get a roulette wheel with those stats is completely random anyway. And if you're in that situation, you can just run the Droptimizer or run a normal best gear sim. So, but that's what this tool is. The other one that's available is stat weights. This is kind of an outdated way of thinking about the game. They even have a warning when you come to this page that says they strongly advise against using stat weights. They're an outdated tool and often result in suboptimal results. Using direct sims of actual gear is a vastly better approach. I don't necessarily disagree with this, but sometimes it's kind of interesting to see like, okay, I know haste is generally my best stat, but based on my current gear, is it still my best stat? I don't know how useful that information is because the only way that you're realistically going to change it is by changing your chance, your gems, or by changing pieces of gear around. And there are other ways that you can directly sim those, right? So you can do that here, but again, you know, it's not something that's more useful than the other tools that are available. Let's take a look at some of the sim results here, just so we can see kind of what they look like. So you can see the trinkets that it's actually recommending me to use are the Gear Grinder Spare Keys and the Tropic Garden Core, fully upgraded. They're about a 14,000 DPS upgrade over what I'm currently wearing. Now, I take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. You know, 14,000 out of 2.37 million is not a large amount. But, you know, technically it would be an upgrade if used optimally. The things that I would say about these, and this is kind of where the critical thinking comes into play. Like I mentioned, you can actually miss the target with the Gear Grinder Spare Keys. If you haven't used this trinket, the way it works is when you use... when you hit the trinket like macro or whatever you have, it just launches a guy on a motorcycle from it's like the guys that come in on Vexy that you have to kill on their motorcycles before you send those into the boss. It just launches one of those in a straight line from where your character is facing. So if you're in a situation where, like, let's say, you know, you're attacking the boss is like on this pillar right here, and you get a circle on you and you need to run away, well, now you can't use your trinket, right? Or like if you're like if you have your camera like this and you're actually facing this way, like the guy will go that way and you can just miss the boss entirely. Or if you're aiming it, like, you know, if you like just barely miss the model, sometimes it just goes through and doesn't actually explode. Also, I've seen this happen in keys. If you're like, you can like send the motorcycle, and if it like just misses what you're trying to hit, it can like actually go and hit something you're not in combat with and pull stuff. So this trinket is a little bit of a sim trap in my opinion. There are some downsides to it, and as you can see, it's not even that big of a damage upgrade compared to other things that I have available. The Garden Core, a lot of people complained about this trinket because at the start of the patch, it spawned these orbs and you had to go and collect them. They did hotfix it a couple of weeks ago so the orbs actually come to you, and I was using this trinket until I got my Mythtrack Reverb Radio. But, you know, the other downsides to it is it has crit instead of int. Now, you do have pretty high uptime on the int buff from it, But I just decided to go the reverb radio so that I could just have a nice strong baseline of high int from that. I'm also running the hero tracks into the priority because I just like having that secondary stat boost when I have my cooldowns running. It lines up with Infernal. I'm mostly playing Destro. And it's a relatively minor. I mean, again, we're talking like 2.37 million. What's 14,000 of that? It's like way less than 1%. So not a huge difference. I'm doing a lot of arguing to justify my decision here, but you get the point. You know, sometimes you'll have a trinket that'll sim and it's like hundreds of thousands of DPS and upgrade, or it's like, you know, close to 100,000, and then it's like, okay, yeah, we should consider using this instead. But again, you know, this will give you an idea of like where things are optimally, and then you can make a decision based on like how big or small of an upgrade it is. Hey, what should I actually do here? And then the other thing to consider is this is running a 5-minute patchwork sim with one boss. So if you're in a situation that is not a no mechanics boss, single target, 5-minute fight, these results are not necessarily accurate, and you may need to adjust the sim settings in what you're doing. And I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. We kind of looked at it earlier, but I'll show you some things that you can actually do to get better results for different scenarios. If we look at the Droptimizer, now the way this works is it'll show you like which bosses have items that are actually upgrades for you. This is Mythic, and then if you scroll down on the page, it'll have every item. So here we can actually see that a Myth Track Mugs Moxie Jug fully upgraded will actually be a 54k DPS upgrade. Now that's just for one trinket instead of replacing both of mine, and that's a significantly higher DPS upgrade. We can see, I accidentally clicked off of my current gear here. We can see that like a Myth Track I have Kazan would be a 22k DPS upgrade. Now the thing with this trinket you have to remember is that it builds up stacks in combat, and if the fight is shorter than 5 minutes, it's going to be less valuable than this. If the fight is longer than 5 minutes, it's going to be more valuable. So you may want to run some sims of various fight lengths if you have this trinket and you want to figure out when you should be using it. If we look at this is dungeon gear, so this is probably what I'll reference when I'm spending my other puzzle and cartel chips. But getting a Myth Track and Tropics Garden Core would actually be a pretty significant upgrade compared to like swapping both of my trinkets currently. The Synergistic Brutalizer or Brutalizer, this thing sims really high. I have chosen not to use it. I've actually had it offered in my vault twice on Myth Track, and I passed it both times, even though it sims well, because I don't want to deal with a trinket that makes you target something to attack and then move back to your last target. I know there are ways to handle that via like simple macros, but I don't know. I don't want to have to deal with like watching for a weak aura to spawn that tells me I have a barrel and then immediately swapping to hit it with something instant cast. Like, it just feels like more of a headache than running a passive trinket that's going to be almost as good. Yeah, you can scale down and see what all the different options available to you here are. So the last thing that I wanted to cover is simming. We'll just go into a Top Gear sim here. It'll keep, that's another useful feature of the site, is it'll keep your pasted input. I don't know if you have to have an account or if it just like stores that in the cookies or whatever, but that's useful. But what I want to cover here is how do you sim for scenarios that are not a single target boss encounter. So there are a few different things that you can do here. If you go under Patchwork, if you go under Fight Style, you can swap out from Patchwork. There are a few different options. Hectic Ad Cleave is one that people have used in the past. I wouldn't necessarily use this one. I think Patchwork is generally the best one to do, and then you can do a couple of things to kind of change up the scenario a little bit. Dungeon Slice is something that can be useful. There is an important note here. It says check with your class Discord to see if this is appropriate for your spec. Some classes and specs have a very good Dungeon Slice sim profile. Many, maybe even most, do not. So you want to make sure that your class has a theory crafter who is keeping this updated and doing a good job of it. Otherwise, you want to just stick to some different Patchwork sims. Now, a 1 minute fight or a one boss 5 minute encounter is kind of a rare thing these days. But for general like raid reclears, this isn't too inaccurate. But for Mythic Plus, this isn't really super useful data, right? Like, there aren't a lot of Mythic Plus bosses that take 5 minutes, and there's a lot of combat in Mythic Plus where you're not fighting a single boss. So if you want to get an idea of what gear is better for Mythic Plus, you know, you can go back up and just like select your different trinkets and stuff. We're not actually going to run these sims this time, but I'm going to show you what you can do. Some of the different scenarios you'll find yourself in Mythic Plus that matter are things like a 5 target 40 second, maybe like an 8 target 1 minute scenario. Those are different things that you can sim. And what you want to do is like run this sim where it's like, okay, this is probably like a double pull, like we're pulling 2 packs together and cleaving them down. They take about a minute. Maybe there's like a 5 boss pack that takes 40 seconds because we're popping it with Bloodlust, right? You'll notice if you go to like a shorter fight length section, it'll actually vary the fight length by up to 20%, just to give you a little bit more accurate results over the sample size. But maybe maybe you want to sim for like the Cauldron of Carnage, or, well, that's a bad example because you're usually just fighting one boss in that. But maybe there's like a two boss council fight that you want to sim, but you know that it's going to take your guild 8 minutes to kill it. You can change those settings here and sim that. But anyway, my point is, what you want to do is adjust the settings that you have here based on what you expect to be happening in the dungeons that you're running. I think, again, the most useful would be like 5 bosses 1 minute or even 40 seconds, and then like 8 bosses 1 minute or 40 seconds, something like that. And then compare the results and see if there are trinkets that are best in most of the scenarios, or one that's like a huge outlier in one scenario where it's worth running even though it's a little bit worse in single target, and kind of make an educated decision based on what you expect to be happening in each key. For example, in Theater of Pain, there's a lot of single target combat, and there's a lot of like low number of mob pull targets. There's only like a couple of places in that dungeon where you can actually do a big AoE pull. So for that scenario, running like, you know, maybe a 3 boss sim and then like a 1 boss sim might be a really good way to get some ideas for, you know, what you're going to be encountering in that dungeon, versus something like Motherload, where you can do like massive pulls at several different points in the dungeon. And in those, you may want to like choose the 8 boss 1 minute and give a little bit more weight to that than like your single target sim encounters. Another thing that you can do, we already talked about this, you can choose different talent loadouts. So if you have like a single target build versus a hybrid build because there's some ads on a fight, you want to sim those, you can do that. If you want to sim your hero talents against each other, you can do that here as well. You can even make a custom loadout that you can set up here using this tool. But yeah, those are kind of all the different things that you can do with the Simcraft add-on and the Raidbots website. If you found this video helpful, please let me know. Give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel. If you have any questions about anything I didn't cover, or about things that I did that maybe I wasn't clear on, please let me know in the description down below, or in the comments down below. And I will do my best to answer every question to the best of my ability. If I don't know the answer, I'll let you know, and maybe I'll try and find some resources that may point you in the right direction. That'll be the video for today. If you liked it, give it a like, and if you found it helpful, consider subscribing to the channel. Until next time, farewell, my friends.